Okay, we're live on YouTube. Mr. Mayor, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, and welcome everybody to the special city council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. It's a virtual Zoom meeting. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mayor Beagle,
I am present and I'm attending this meeting tonight from Wixom, Michigan, County of Oakland.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
I am here and I'm also attending from Wixom, Michigan, Oakland County.
Councilmember Behrman,
Present, City of Wixom, Oakland County, Michigan.
Councilmember Gotchel,
Present, attending from Wixom, Oakland County, Michigan, United States, North America.
Councilmember Grenlin Fox,
Here, I'm attending from the city of Wixom, Oakland County, state of Michigan.
Councilmember Sharp,
Present, attending from Wixom, Michigan, Oakland County.
Councilmember Smiley.
I'm here attending from my home in Wixom, Michigan, Oakland County.
Quorum present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Changes or additions to the agenda as presented tonight. City Manager, do you have any?
Mayor, I have no changes or additions to the agenda.
Any from the council? All right, seeing none, we'll move right on to the call to the public. This is the first call to the public, and the rules to the call to the public are as follows. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reasoning for addressing the council. All comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. And since this is a virtual or electronic meeting, members of the public wishing to participate in the virtual public comment must alert us that they would like to speak by pressing *9 on their telephone keypad. By pressing *9, it'll activate the raised hand feature, signaling to us that you would wish to comment. And once you are activated, we'll call you one at a time, just like what happened in an in-person meeting. We have anybody for the first call to the public?
Let's see if anybody raises their hand. Reminder, press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. Press *9. And after you're called on, press *6 to unmute yourself. No one has raised their hand yet, but we'll give it a moment. No one has raised their hand.
All right, seeing none, I'll close that first call to the public and we'll move on to new business. We have one item of new business tonight, and that is a recommendation by staff, the planning consultant, and the planning commission that the city council approve the introduction of an mandatory ordinance to rezone approximately 104.4 acres at 29311 South Wixom Road, parcel number 22-072-00-012 from 1-2 General Industrial to GPUD Gateway Planned Unit Development for the following reasons. 1, the proposed reasoning meets the qualifying condition that the property be within the former Ford Wixom plant site. 2, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the goals, policies, and future land use map in the City of Wixom Master Plan. 3, the proposed rezoning is compatible with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features. 4, the proposed uses in the GPUD are compatible with surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land's suitability, impacts on the environment, density, nature of use, traffic impacts, aesthetics, infrastructure, and potential influence on property values. 5, the capacity of the city infrastructure and services is sufficient to accommodate the uses permitted in the district without compromising the health, safety, and welfare of the city. And number 6, the proposed rezoning allows greater flexibility in land development and uses. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, I have a motion and a support. I'll turn this part of the meeting over to our city manager, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have an important prospect for development here in front of us this evening for consideration. We have a proposed project that Flint Development is going to speak on a little bit later here after I finish with our coverage of this report document. They're going to provide a presentation on what they're proposing to do with 104.4 acres of the former Ford Wixom plant property. And they're looking for rezoning that acreage from M2 to Gateway Planned Unit Development, or GPUD. The reason that we would be looking at this kind of a rezoning is that all the uses that are allowed in the M2 zoning designation are also allowed under GPUD, but it additionally allows for a couple of other different uses like commercial, office, research, and technology. And beyond that, it gives us some additional flexibility, or gives the developer some additional flexibility in land development, which includes like a variety in design, changes in layout and type of structures, economies and efficiencies in the land use, and also good utilization of the public resources and services and utilities that are available. We have provided a variety of attachments to the report that was provided for you this evening. There's a rezoning application that talks about why how they're looking for this rezoning. There's a document within that package of the rezoning application, C1, which essentially is the preliminary site plan. The rest of the documentation that's included with that package is basically supporting documentation for the C1 page, which covers the preliminary site plan for the property. This is a conceptual plan that's reflected on C1 that regulates the overall use of the land, the layout, the road construction and configurations, and the uses of the property. We'll go through a more detailed review of the proposed development at a later time when we're going through final GPUD plan review and approval. It's going to cover things like utilities, engineering, landscaping, and other items such as that, as has been submitted by Flint Development during the process. Flint Development is proposing to construct in the long run 5 buildings on the property. The total of these buildings, which is hypothetical at this point, as they're presently proposed, would be about 1.5 million, or 1,576,000 square feet, with potential uses including manufacturing, warehousing, logistics, and distribution. As I mentioned, it's speculative at this time. We don't have users identified with the project. There was a traffic study that was completed on the projected uses for the property and the potential impact on Wixom Road. Because of that, the applicant worked with both the city and the Road Commission of Oakland County to develop a conceptual preliminary plan. It's shown on C1 that incorporates the improvements to South Wixom Road and West Road intersection also. If there are differences in ultimate users down the road that would bring about different traffic counts and increase or decrease the traffic counts, the traffic study would have to be revisited at that time later in the project as we identify users that could change the dynamics of what's required. One of the next steps that we're going to go through is a development agreement. City staff has been working with the city attorney to draft that, and we should have it finalized early this week into tomorrow probably. And then we'll provide that to Flint Development if this proceeds from tonight. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the introduction of that amendatory ordinance to change zoning from M2 to the GPUD. And at your meeting of January 26th, if there's an approval of the action tonight, we would then look for enactment of that amendatory ordinance and also look at approval of the preliminary GPUD site plan that is proposed under that C1. That development agreement that I mentioned is going to cover a lot of details about the development, including specific requirements, timing of improvements, phasing, duration of approvals, financial guarantees, and other things that are required under our GPUD practices. As I mentioned, that's going to be available by your meeting on the 26th, assuming that we come up with a document that's mutually acceptable to us and to Flint Development. So lastly, I want to talk about what's happened so far. It was taken to Planning Commission. And they held a public hearing and reviewed the application at their January 11th meeting. There were no public comments made at that time. And the Planning Commission did recommend that City Council approve the rezoning as well as the preliminary GPUD site plan. As I mentioned, that preliminary GPUD site plan would be subject to your action potentially at January 26th, along with the enactment of the rezoning change through the ordinance amendment if we proceed tonight. And with that, that's pretty much what I was going to do as an overview. The game plan from here is we're going to have representatives of Flint Development discuss their proposal, provide additional information to council for your consideration so that you can take action tonight as you see fit. on what is before you today, which is the introduction of that amendatory ordinance to rezone the property to GPUD. So we have Hunter Harris from Flint Development that I would introduce now. He's got many members of his team with him tonight too, and likely he'll end up calling on them at different points and times as need be. But otherwise, I turn it over to Hunter Harris. Rob, can you enable screen sharing, please? If that hasn't been done.
Yes.
And I'll turn it
Okay.
over to Mr. Hunter Harris.
All right, go ahead.
Well, thank you for that, Steve. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, first and foremost, thank you for your time in this special session this evening. I can assure you that we have been working incredibly hard with your staff over the past many months since we first contemplated this project and offered to purchase a portion of the ground from ICP. A little bit about us. So I am one of the two partners with Flint Development. I have with me tonight Devin Schuster, my other partner, and also Kevin Lee with the Polsinelli Law Firm and Chris Hafner with Davidson Architecture and Engineering. We are a relatively new firm called Flint after the Flint Hills in Kansas, no relation to the city of Flint in Michigan. A beautiful place here in our part of the world. And we are working on speculative, ground up, infill development projects all over the country. Two of our first will be actually in Oakland County, the project that we have before you tonight, which we are tremendously excited about, and also a project in Pontiac, Michigan, that we will be commencing construction on in the spring as well, of a similar size of building. I'd like to share with you a little bit of our representative work and portfolio. What you see on the screen here is on the upper left, a project that we just completed in Liberty, Missouri. It's a 710,000 square foot building that abuts the Ford Claycomo plant. It is presently leased and completed construction. We just broke ground on a 600,000 square foot project in Blue Springs, Missouri. And we are also working on, you can see the project in Pontiac on the upper right. And we're also working on projects from Salt Lake to Suffolk, Virginia, and several points in between. We were candidly attracted to Detroit for many reasons. One, we think there are a lot of opportunities for growth, particularly in the manufacturing sector, and is directed by our capital markets group. They see a definite need for readily available space for tenants. And that is what our firm sets out to do, where we focus on spec development. So we do not buy sites, wait for tenants to come to us and do build-to-suit projects. In today's world, these users' requirements have changed. When they identify that they want to be in either a city, a region, or a state, oftentimes the requirement to occupy that space can be a matter of months. So there are developers such as ourselves to take that development risk to go put up quality Class A buildings that are also designed in a facet so that they appeal to as many wider ranges of users as possible. So we are not pigeonholed to any one type of user. And located in our buildings, you will see a mix of manufacturers, some with higher office components, some with lower, and we like to have parking that's flexible enough to accommodate both of those needs, logistics users, general industrial users, technology providers, et cetera. We fell in love with the site in Wixom from first sight. It was brought to us by our broker, Dan Labus with Newmark, and I'll tell you specifically why. It's infill, it's in a terrific location, in a great community. All of the demographics are there for this project. We're utilizing existing infrastructure as opposed to going into a green field. And plowing in new roads, expanding the grid. And we're also filling in what's a pretty sizable hole here in the market as you enter the community along Wixom Road. So we have been pleased to work with your staff and their team of experts to begin what we view as the first step in a process here. We've obviously, as I've hinted on here, been working behind the scenes for many months to get to the point where we are here. And candidly, we have a ways to go as our final design transpires. And if we're fortunate enough to be blessed with your approval tonight, a lot of work to get done on further details for both our design and landscaping and final building products. So we view ourselves as being at a great first step in the process. What you see here is 104 acres that we're under contract to purchase from ICP. It is not the entirety of the site. They'll retain approximately somewhere between 70 and 80 acres. We have broken the project into two phases, and I'll tell you why here. What you see highlighted on the bottom of your screen is phase one, broken into two different buildings. Building A is the larger cross-dock facility. It's a little over 700,000 square feet, and we see that being a host to as few as one and as potentially as many as 8 different tenants, depending on how the market receives the building. That features more dock doors, which are not aligned to the street, sufficient parking. And then we have a companion sister building that's vastly different. We will be extending West Road with additional traffic signal improvements as part of the work that we've done with the Road Commission of Oakland County through the site, and that will provide an entry into the rear of the park for future development by ICP or others. The B building that you see there is only 150 feet deep. It's designed to house what I would describe as more flex types of uses. So probably less industrial manufacturing, a higher office component, less dock doors. And we think it makes a nice front door to West Road there. And what we have here are 2 different types of buildings that'll serve very different tenants. Of building B, I actually think of our design firm in Davidson. You'll hear from Chris Hafner here later. Their firm started in a very similar building where you had architects and engineers working in the front of the building and had a survey crew and equipment in the rear of the building. So just a little bit of flavor for what we're thinking here. We're making a pretty sizable financial bet. We have a $70 million project with all of our capital committed. We use very little leverage on our projects and have a dedicated equity source for all of that we're doing. The first phase, as you can see here, is a little less than 900,000 square feet and will constitute a $70 million investment in the community. This is just a little further detail on the first phase of the project. As to the second phase, we've left greater flexibility. We provided some general building layouts, but we're anxious to see how the market receives the first phase of the project. We also have a portion of that site where if a user did contact us that wanted a build-to-suit type of project, we have the flexibility to do that there. In total, we're committed to building out all phases of the project, but we don't want to write the entire story here until we see how the first chapter goes with our first phase of the project. I would stand for any questions or comments. If not, what I had planned to do is pass the torch here, and we'll play a bit of musical chairs to Kevin Lee with Polsinelli Law Firm to go through some of the current zoning and some of the information about the request from you this evening. But again, want to thank you for your time very much. We look forward to a win-win partnership with the city of Wixom and are really excited to get going here and make an investment in the community. We think it's a great site and we can do really well with it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Harris. And then I think we should just continue with the presentation and then save all the questions till after the presentation is over. So move on.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Kevin Lee with the Polsinelli Law Firm representing Flint Development. Hunter touched on this topic briefly in his introduction there, but I do think that it's important to note at the outset that as it stands today, this site is already appropriately zoned for this project with the existing M2 general industrial zoning classification. We've been working for the past few months with city's planning staff and others, and at their direction are pursuing the change of zone to GPUD, since, as Steve mentioned, that provides additional flexibility largely with respect to the future phases of this project. And I think it'll also garner some higher quality landscaping and design for you all as well. This next slide is extremely busy, so I apologize for that in advance, but it's really just a visual representation of what I mentioned, that under the existing M2 zoning classification, this touches the 4 to 5 major parking and placement requirements and shows that we meet all of those on the phase 1, referring to buildings A and B. And that's when looking at phase 2 in a vacuum, we meet nearly all of those as well, with the only exception being those few items that are specified in our table of modifications that was recommended for approval at last week's Planning Commission meeting. So again, just reiterating that it is currently zoned appropriately for the project, but we're pursuing the GPUD for the additional flexibility and higher quality standards that provides. Happy to stand for questions to the extent there are any at this point. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to our principal architect, Chris Hafner, to touch on building design and landscaping.
Good evening, Chris Hafner with Davidson Architecture and Engineering. Thank you for the time and consideration of our project. Again, to tag on to what the design thesis for this overall site was, it was really master plan it, give us flexibility in building use on the site, and come up with, in our opinion, a great looking building, insulated precast wall panels, a lot of glass, and really make sure that the design directive was focused along Wixom Road. And that's what we tried to do here. We provided about a 100-foot green belt from Wixom Road to our parking field. We did face the buildings and not the dock doors toward Wixom Road to make sure that we had the best front possible as people come up and down Wixom Road in the north-south direction, to be able to see a building that was really kind of heightened architecturally and also sensitive to building setbacks and keeping it farther away from the street than maybe you've seen with other industrial projects. I'm just going to flip through a couple slides here. Again, this is building A. We took out some of the landscaping just for a little bit of clarity to help understand a little bit more of how much glass we had on the front, some of the canopies, the breakdown of the facade, so it wasn't a monotonous run in a horizontal pattern, and also gave some scale to the building vertically in providing some second story windows, some daylighting up even higher, and bringing those canopy features that we have on either end of the building to the middle of the building as well, to further break down the scale of that building. As mentioned before, we'll also be working closely with our civil engineering team who's local there and on the call tonight as well, to further enhance landscaping in some areas. We've had some great discussions with staff. Appreciate their time and consideration in helping us get this project to this point and hopefully moving forward. One more, just really quick look at what you see there with A. We've got room for green space along the building as well. We set the curb line about 15 feet off the face of the building, which allows for a 6-foot sidewalk, but also still allows that ability to put some green between the sidewalk and the building, and maybe more of a sense of scale with those buildings. This facade, for the most part, is going to be about 48 feet tall on this to provide the 36 clear that we have for the building and the roof slope. That's really kind of the standard and market requirements right now for this type of use. Flipping to building B, this building, as Hunter mentioned, what we typically call a front park rear load or flex type building, really does give a lot of glass along the frontage, which would be the West Road extension, as well as the Wixom Road side of this project. So a lot more tenant possibilities, so a lot more entry options. What we tried to provide there while maintaining a sense of architectural cohesiveness with the buildings, but also providing a different scale. This building won't be as tall, but it'll still provide nice clear height in the building, but breaks that scale down a little bit more for that pedestrian frontage. Again, just another quick view along Wixom Road. Again, imagine you're, several hundred feet from this on the road, but we wanted to kind of show you again that second story glass, the amount of kind of undulation that we have in that facade to kind of break that down as well. And again, additional landscaping that we provide through this project. One more slide that I'll just touch on quickly. This is a view here of our landscape plan. So you can see we really tried to focus building B, which is the smaller building, creating a nice green belt in front of that project. You can see kind of the architectural landscape in that island as the road turns back to the west for our access point to West Road. And then we worked really closely with staff, and we'll continue to work with them on additional screening for some of the trailer storage that happens on building A, and beef up our landscaping even more than what you see here today along Wixom Road. With that, I will turn it back over to Mr. Kevin Lee to talk about traffic.
Again, Kevin Lee with the Polsinelli Law Firm representing Flint Development. We really have looked at traffic every which way imaginable on this project, and between the city's traffic consultant, our own traffic consultant, RCOC, and others, feel that we've really designed and come up with a great layout and project that ultimately is going to accommodate every potential scenario given the nature of this project as speculative industrial. So there are certainly others on the call that are better suited to engage with you on a detailed discussion on traffic, but I did want to just quickly touch on a few high-level points that we feel are important and make this easier to understand for those of us who might not necessarily be traffic experts. The first of those is that this project represents one of the least intensive likely uses for this site in regard to traffic generation. And what I mean by that is that you see on the left here our original traffic study evaluation as compared to a number of other conceivable or potential uses for this site, including maximum build out of the site, referring to if all 1.5 million square feet were to end up being an Amazon type user. And then also on this chart is the Ford Wixom assembly plant that previously occupied the site, followed by a regional shopping center use, which would be much more intense there on the right. As was mentioned, we've also worked with the Road Commission of Oakland County, have incorporated revisions from them. What you see here is a snapshot of their December 15th letter providing their conceptual approval. Just throughout that process over the past couple months, we've incorporated a number of revisions, working with our own traffic consultant, the city's consultant, RCOC, and the like, and a number of important revisions that have really led to a better project, a few of which are depicted here on a snapshot of a site plan. All of those changes and improvements that we've made to the plan are in addition to the recommendations of our own traffic consultant and their traffic impact study, all of which have been incorporated into our design as well. And then finally, it's important to note that this site has been designed to accommodate not only our project as currently envisioned, but also the worst case scenario, if you will. And specifically what I mean by that is that the city's traffic consultant asked us to prepare a supplemental analysis that looks at and determines at what point additional mitigation measures might be warranted if the entire site again was to be used for a much more intense use like an Amazon type user. And so the result of that study was that 2 additional mitigation measures would potentially be warranted. And we have made sure that we've accommodated both or have the ability to accommodate both if and when warranted based on trip generation upon identifying users. So we have provided plans to the city that show that we have the ability to accommodate those improvements, and this chart is just a depiction of same. Here's our truck movement plan. What you see in red is the points of ingress, and depicted in blue is where we anticipate that folks would exit the site. And our goal and thesis in designing the truck movement plan was just to provide as much separation as possible with respect to passenger vehicle and truck traffic. So we think our team has done a good job of keeping those 2 components separate and distinct. Finally, just a summary slide putting all those points together. And I will turn it back over to Hunter Harris to touch on the community benefit aspect of the project. Thank you, Kevin. And I've actually touched on quite a few of these here. Again, just an overview of the initial investment in phase one. We estimate, based on our experience, that this first phase should create in excess of 750 jobs in the community. As you can see here, based on the flexibility of phase two and the diversity of uses that we expect in phase one, our thought here is that this is actually going to be a park of mixed uses with our ability to do different sizes of buildings that cater to a lot of different tenant demands in the marketplace. We are confident that if we build it, they will come. Particularly in this location, we think it's of high quality. There's an excellent workforce available, and particularly given its strong fundamentals as sites go with accessibility to the highway and otherwise. We see a big benefit for the community as it relates to property taxes, again, creating a win-win. And just wanted to touch on our overall schedule here. We were fortunate enough to be unanimously approved by your Planning Commission for approval this evening, our first reading on this tonight. And again, thank you for the special session of flexibility on the proposed second reading. We'd like to break ground this spring on the project, at least commence site work. So we are working in earnest to do just that. As they say, time kills deals. We've had lots of different users reach out to about this, and we're candidly at the point where we can't say much and we don't say much, other than we're working hard on it, and we want to build a quality project here. And I've mentioned a little bit about the flexibility in the Class A here. This is the request that you have before you this evening. And our team would stand for any questions, comments, or concerns. Other than that, would pass it back to Steve, and very much appreciate your attention and time this evening.
All right, very good. I'll start out with the questions and then I'll move on to my fellow council members. But a couple questions I have is, this is purely a spec building. I don't mind the blue and gold colors. I like blue and gold, but that also is the same color as a online shopping company that's been mentioned a couple of times. And I just feel that a building this size, building it with no possible tenants, I'm curious. So there's no tenants right now.
Yeah, I can assure you that we have 0 tenants. And Amazon's probably a bad example to use here. They're actually located, and I think our brokers could better illustrate this, near enough away with their new facility. So I don't envision them as a potential tenant for this project. As it relates to the building coloring, we didn't even think about that. Actually, it was brought to our attention. Those are two colors of a university located within the state of Michigan, not all that far away.
Yep.
And I think that's really my point is, with the approval this evening, we view this as our starting point. We think not only have we done a lot of work as it relates to the traffic, the general planning, and some of the architecture that you see here with your staff, there's a lot more work to do. And frankly, we're taking input on these types of items. So we are not married to the colors that you see before you this evening. It's been suggested to us that perhaps some more neutral palettes could be utilized. We want to do something that's very visually interesting to give the project some dynamicism. And we also have had some discussion with Steve and staff, and we fielded a lot of good questions and comments from your Planning Commission as it relates to, should there be different and distinct building architecture amongst these different buildings, or should we have a common theme? What does that campus style setting really mean here? And I think there will be some fluidity as we move and make good decisions as we head into our final design and building construction documents.
All right, good. And then I have a couple of landscaping questions. The landscaping, the trees and stuff along Wixom Road look nice and everything, but what's the trunk size of the of those trees? And then how tall will those trees get to?
I'd ask Jason with NF or Jeff with NF, who are both on the call this evening, to perhaps opine on that.
Yeah, good evening. This is Jason with Nowak and Frous. I'm actually browsing to open up the landscape plan now. The majority of the trees look like they're all 2.5-inch caliper. The evergreen trees are going in at 6 to 8 foot height. So there's going to be a wide variety of trees there. Some of them will be smaller ornamental trees. Other will be much larger, growing up into that 30-foot range. So there'll be a good mix. Looks like we've got about 10 different species of trees proposed right now. So wide variety that will get, large and mature as the project goes on.
That's one of my concerns is to camouflage the building a little bit more, since it's going to be such a tall building. And then along the south edge, the property that borders Menards, I see there's some parking spaces, and I assume it's green spot for some future parking spots, but there's no trees over on that end.
That's correct, sir. That is on the plan that you saw. We have actually had a conversation with staff after our planning commission meeting to build some greater consensus. And as you see final development plans move forward, you will see some additional landscaping and screening added there as well.
Okay. All right, very good. And with that, any of my council, I know my council members are going to have some questions. I can only see Tia right now on my screen. So if anybody has questions, Tia, go ahead, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. So the mayor brought up a couple of the same questions that I had. Well, let me back up. First, I want to welcome you to the city of Wixom and tell you that for a big box building, it looks nice. It's not what I would have anticipated that would have went in the space, but your team did a nice job with the building. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I too am not real crazy about the colors, but I know that's subjective, so I'm sure that will be worked out. I know I was reading through the planning commission minutes, and there was some talk about the gray, and they didn't really care for the gray. I don't mind the gray. I actually think it looks nice. Just not real crazy about the blue and gold, and nothing to do with the school, but just the combination of the colors. I'm happy to hear that you're going to add some screening on that south edge by Menards. I think that would really go a long way and look nice. One question I had was about the parking, and I'm not sure if Ms. McIntyre would be the best person for this, but as far as our ordinance for this site, or this large of a site, how many parking spaces are required? And then how many parking spaces do you actually have? Because it looks like a lot.
We did some preliminary calculations, and I don't actually have the numbers in front of you, but believe it or not, combined with all the phases, the parking does not exceed what we allow in our ordinance. We allow up to 20% more parking if it's demonstrated that it is needed. And what they're showing as an overall does not exceed that. So at this point, parking meets the standards, will meet the standard.
So Ms. McIntyre, would that be, so that's for the whole project? That's not by the building A, building B, C, so on and so forth. That's the whole project that you look at the parking spaces for?
That is correct. And we did look at building A and B, and they are in compliance.
Okay. Just, it looks like a lot of asphalt, but.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was gonna, all I was gonna mention there is we've only shown a portion of the impervious area, and we've shown actually some further areas that are potential. We definitely don't want to put in a bunch of unneeded parking if the project or tenancy doesn't call for it. So we've left a little bit of flexibility in the plan so that we can preserve as much green space as possible from the outset.
Great. And I do like the islands that you put in, and that did break it up a little bit. It just, and it's a big piece of property, so I understand why there's so much asphalt. It looks like a lot when you look at the plans. So I had some concerns about the traffic, but I understand that that's going to be looked at again based on the tenant. So I totally understand that. As far as the trees, Ms. McIntyre, can you tell me how they are doing with the tree plantings, and if they met our ordinance with how many trees they had to take out based on how many trees they'll put back in?
We have not reviewed it that carefully. Those kind of calculations we will do at final site plan review and approval. We do ask that they provide preliminary landscape plans with the preliminary submission, just so we can get an idea of where they intend to do screening, so we can address some of those issues right off the bat, and then we will evaluate, compare it to our ordinance requirements during final site plan.
Okay. And I think that's all I had right now. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Berman, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll echo both your comments and Ms. Grellin Fox's comments. I do think the color scheme of the gold and blue could be updated. I'd like to see, if possible, that they could kind of mesh the colors of the buildings well with the existing buildings that have already been built there. So that it's not just clashing. Same thing with the signage and everything along Wixom Road. If we could eventually see where, the signage up on Wixom Road would mirror the signage for the Assembly Park development that's already gone in, just so there's some consistency amongst all of it. Realistically, the only thing that I really am concerned about is the landscaping, specifically on the south edge of the property, after the Menards lumberyard ends out until that Assembly Drive would be, given the fact that that's going to expose 20 or 30 loading docks, and that's going to be the first thing that people are going to see when they turn into our city. They're going to see, the At Home, the Menards, and then 30 different truck wells. I really hope that particular, 150-foot stretch could be beefed up to make sure that there's enough landscaping there that when people are coming north on Wixom Road, they're not seeing those truck wells in that particular spot. I know you can't hide it completely everywhere, but in that particular spot, if there's any way we could possibly increase the green belt space and increase the landscaping there, just to make sure there's some really decent coverage there. But besides that, I think the development is really well put together. I'm excited to see something besides piles of gravel and concrete disappear and something new come up. So appreciate the time and effort you've put into this as well.
Well, thank you so much for your comments. I will address too, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, of those comments. We will most certainly pay attention to the screening areas where you mentioned. We've had some discussion with that with staff and make sure that If we can't completely hide it, we will give it our absolute fantastic efforts to do just that. So when we have several ideas and solutions in our pocket. The other is that while on mute here, I was discussing with our team, what I'd like to propose is I'm tasking our design team here to go back and put together a couple of different color variations and palettes for the building. And then I'd like to circulate that back to Steve and actually get some input from both the Planning Commission and the council on that. I don't know that we'll ever find 100% consensus, but it's a very important project. And typically what we see happen here is there's a majority favorite. So that is something we will work on our end and can have that put together by week's end. But we hear your comments loud and clear and we'll get them addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gotcho.
Thank you. I did have a number of questions here. Looking at particularly building A, the larger one there, what is your planned minimum divisible space for those units if you have more than one user?
That's a great question. We could see that building being demised probably 8 times. So 8 tenant spaces. So can somebody help me with the math real quick? I'm a calculator guy. Approximately 90,000 square feet. Yeah, 90,000 square feet. And that would mean a spine wall, the length of the building, and 2 demising walls. In that case, and what we show on our plan are some center parking areas that break up the truck courts that we would utilize. You'll see that several places successfully in your market. We don't do that from the outset because we are encouraged about the larger size manufacturers that are circling and leasing activity, looking for space in and around the metro. We think Wixom would be an excellent home for that. So as few as 1, as many as 8.
What you'd mentioned some manufacturing. What would you foresee going in there? What do you hope approaches you as a tenant?
Well, we hope somebody who can pay a fair amount of rent and deliver a lot of quality jobs. That's probably high on the wish list. And, fortunately, in the overall community, those are probably the highest percentage of users that we've been seeing. I can tell you our project in Pontiac, we have gone through a similar process and received Planning Commission approval. And prior to breaking ground, we're contacted by 2 different tenants, one being a 700,000 square foot manufacturer for that space, and the other is a 234,000 square foot tenant. So I think we'll see some diversity here in the overall tenant mix. What I wanted to illustrate to you is, and the members of the council, is these users don't have 1 or 2 years to plan a project. When they have a space requirement, the market is morphed to these being immediate needs. So oftentimes we don't get many serious looks until we have a building going vertical. So we have to design a building that has immense flexibility as it relates to ceiling heights and overall design so that we can appeal to as many types of users as possible.
And so that was part of the question. Is our last precast building that we allowed in the city, their minimum divisible space, I believe, was 30,000, and they really struggled to find any users. I think that was also a spec that sat vacant, constructed for 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
So that was just a part of the question, is making sure that it's not, and that was feedback from the tenants that looked at the building too, saying that it just was not flexible enough for what everybody wanted, and that's why it sat and sat and sat. And then when you were talking about representative buildings, you have the one that was newly constructed. Do you have tenants in there right now? How quickly is that been to lease? Who's in there?
Well, it's here in the Kansas City market. It abuts the Ford Claycomo plant. Our first tenant is actually a food processing company. We thought it would be home to more uses that would be filtering the plant. They're occupying about half of the building, and we have the other half of the building for lease.
Okay. How long has that been available for lease?
We just completed construction on it at the end of December. So
Okay.
about 19 days. Half of it was committed prior to completion of construction.
Okay.
I would, if I had to make a bet, which I don't, I would say that we are confident that a significant portion, at least half of the space, would be committed prior to completion of construction, with the balance of the building being fully leased within 12 months. And I think our brokerage representatives, and based on our thorough analysis of the market, would say that's a fairly good thesis of how we should play out here.
And are A and B going up simultaneously, or A
Yeah.
then B?
Yes, sir. We would be building both of these projects at the same time.
Okay.
And honestly, the smaller building is so much more costly. It's really one of the only ways that we can build it on spec and achieving the economies of scale of doing both at the same time. We also think it also gives us greater flexibility to, cater to tenants both large and small here.
Okay. And have you thought about what your planned maintenance schedule is for exterior maintenance over time? Like, how frequently will you repaint?
I would say every 5 to 7 years on repainting. We would hire a third-party property management company. We're not in the property management business. We build buildings, lease them, and own them. And someone here locally that would be accustomed to the schedule.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. That being said, what we do pride on ourselves are having high-quality buildings. What we see is a decrease in rent rate when a project starts to get long in the tooth. So we want to stay current on roofs, structure, landscaping, exterior materials, so that we can continue to keep a high rental rate in the market.
Okay. And that question kind of comes from another. We've had 2 fairly recent precast buildings, and that's why I'm overall apprehensive about precast to begin with. But then of this size, sometimes that's the only affordable way to do it. But the other ones are not that old, and the paint, I drive by them every day. The paint is already fading and running from our weather, and it's been 5 years. So I just want to make sure that that is maintained, especially on something this size and scale, and in an area that we have kind of referred to as the gateway to Wixom, off of the expressway there. It's one thing to have a giant building that doesn't really match the rest of its surroundings, but even more so when it is not looking so hot. Going back to maintenance, with the West Road extension, is that going to be privately owned by Flint Development, or is that going to be turned into a city road and our maintenance responsibility?
I'm pretty sure that it's contemplated as being a private road. Those have been our discussions.
Okay. I guess that would just be something as a comment to city staff to clear up and maintain, because I know in the past, our engineers have always recommended having concrete roads for heavy truck traffic areas, because they do better with the support and load. And it looks like pretty much everything is asphalt there. So that would just be something that caught my eye, as keeping an eye on, basically. Getting over to landscaping, I kind of echo the comments of everyone else. But one of the other questions I had was, it looks like everything, at leaf-bearing trees. And so that is nice in the spring and summer and part of fall. It helps screen everything, but then in winter, it does nothing for us. So I'm just wondering if that's being accounted for, how that's can be accounted for. I mean, it looks like there's a few pines, but most everything else looks to be pretty leafy.
I think what we can do to address that and make sure, and I'm looking at Jason via Zoom here, is that we have more than healthy amount of evergreen trees, particularly in areas of high importance screening, and also to provide some greater enhancement there.
Yep. Yeah, I was just looking at the planting schedule he's got proposed, and there is a mixture of evergreen and deciduous trees, but we can definitely enhance that.
Okay, I think that would just help out with screening. I know in the planning commission minutes I read, and then even in this meeting, people talked about seeing the truck docks, and I can't recall, Steve or anyone else from staff, is that outline? I know Menards likes to hold one of the outlots. Is that the one that they intend to hold that would kind of screen this building from the south, or is that one actively for sale?
There would be the possibility of a little bit of added screening if that one parcel between Aldi's and the credit union is developed, and that is something that's still in the active discussion phase. And actually, it's crept back up after kind of falling off the radar. So yeah, we could see some development there, which would add additional screening. You're right.
So that's not the one that they plan to hold for some reason.
Now, the ones that I'm speaking of are between that on the frontage between Aldi and the credit union.
Okay.
And then going back to the private road question, it's anticipated that it is going to be private road. Yes.
Okay. Then I guess just to go back on the looks and my thoughts as well. I appreciate seeing more glass on here than the other buildings. I would still very much so prefer if we can add even more glass, particularly at the second level. Almost like the old transom windows that used to go in factories where you have a line of glass. It's not doable with precast, but something similar, just in the sense that when this first became a redevelopment project like a decade ago, the initial plan was to make it that all glass fronted research and development along Wixom Road. I'm not sure if anyone's shared that with Flint Development yet, but I would like to kind of maintain that look, because the screening of glass fronted, you could put more commercial plain looking buildings behind it, but I think we need a little bit more glass. And you had mentioned campus style versus distinct architectural styles. I would prefer more of a distinct style between phases if possible. Wixom's always been into monotony, and downtown we have the same thing. So to me, places look better when they're a little bit different than their surroundings. So those are mainly my thoughts. I don't mind rezoning this because it gives us the flexibility. When it comes to the screening and the building materials, making sure there's more glass, that's what I would really appreciate when it comes down to it, because this is going to be significantly different than what people had intended from the start. I mean, we haven't let in drive-through restaurants down there because this was the gateway to our city. And that's what former councils and mayors and staff had done. So this is a bit of a shift. And so I'm a little bit leery of it. I mean, it will be a nice development, but I think we can just polish it a bit more, hopefully.
Appreciate your comments. We're going to work to address those.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to say a nice presentation, a lot of good images. Really helps. I got all my C1 through 5 drawings out here in front of me, looking at them occasionally to remind myself. But really nice work and presentation. Just so you know, on the outset, I support this proposal, thinking about looking at dilapidated Wixom assembly plant for years, and then piles of concrete for years after that, and then chain link fence falling down, and all those pine trees looking like death warmed over, anything's better than what we got right now. And we've been working at it for a long time. So I think this is on the right track. However, did want to ask a couple of things, and these are more comments for council as well. But I came to council from Planning Commission, and one of the things that Planning Commission really had heartache over was the precast building on Beck Road, the white building that's now Blue Water Technologies. And it kind of hits you in the face. It's really close to the road. And I don't know offhand what its setback is, but it looks like this one's got 318 feet of setback from the center line of Wixom Road, which is 100 yards to the building. That sounds like a lot to me. So that's going to be one of the, this is a preliminary site plan, but we're going to have to keep a close eye on that doesn't creep back towards the center line of Wixom Road. As we were talking about where, I was thinking about, in traffic and the traffic counts and the comparisons, very effective. Nice job on showing what the other industries we might see, because we probably in the back of our mind think, oh, I'd really like to have a big plant there. Well, traffic's still going to be bad at 8 in the morning and 5 at night. So, however, we all know semis are a lot bigger and a lot slower than passenger cars, and the count is the same. For 100 semis on a traffic study equals 100 cars. So this is going to be all semis. And I don't know how often, but it won't be peak hours as much. It'll just be constant semi trucks. So something for us to think about. But one thing I did, when we talk about traffic, we all remember when the train used to go through there, and that train line, the tracks do come into this property. Is there any plan to use that? I mean, any thought of it? It looks like you show detention ponds and all where those tracks are. I assume those are out of the picture, because that would be, one more traffic consideration if the trains were blocking.
No, we had planned to leave the rail spur into the site just to provide some flexibility at this point. We don't typically see a large number of users that are driven by rail. Or that, need that spur into the site. So we plan to leave it for now. That's on the second phase of the project where, we're not looking to take any immediate action on that. So that's how I would address that.
Okay, so it is a consideration. Last thing I had, and perhaps City Manager Brown or Ms. McIntyre can help me with, how big are the Menards and the at-home buildings? Just kind of give us a sense. 740,000 square feet seems big, but I'll bet Menards is at least half that, isn't it? I don't have a feel for it. Any thoughts on that? It's hard to tell from the.
I couldn't say with any certainty, but I've done a little bit of work with them in the past. I think they're usually around 200,000 square feet. They have much more outdoor storage area, where they have some pretty significant paved areas where, they've got the building materials, and other stuff in and around that. So in part of that's covered, but I think under roof for their stores, it's around 200, 250.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to get a scale in my mind of.
I looked up that very question, and the Menards building is just over 200,000 square feet.
Yep.
Not counting the lumber yard.
Yep.
Yeah. And really large parking lot too.
Yeah.
Okay. No, and that was really all I had. Just kind of, I support this. I think, traffic is traffic, and that's probably the biggest concern, and we'll figure out the appearance thing as we go forward. I know Planning Commission's very careful on those approvals. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple additional things to add. First of all, thank you, Mr. Harris, and to your partners, for the presentation and for the kind words you've said about our city. I'm really glad we've worked. You've worked with our staff on the aesthetics. I think the site plan, and the illustrations, look wonderful. the fascia of the building and the landscaping look good, and it's important, of course, to us to have a good image that fits Wixom. And then these illustrations do that. I like how the fascia is, the building is broken up. The glass, suggested by a couple of the councilmen. Yeah, I think that would look nice too. I mean, the additional glass. It's not a deal breaker for me. And the colors too. I want, these are classic and corporate. I would hate to see something that's looks dated in a few years. And I read what the planning commission said as well about the gray. It's fine with me. But we have a great planning commission, and you can work it out with them. Certainly it's far better than what it's looked like for the past decade, but even in its heyday, the Ford plant was never as as good looking as these things, as your illustrations. And my only the only thing I was worried about, and Councilman Gotchel covered this, and you responded with everything. It was just about the this, all of it being so much spec. I guess that's normal. Seems like there's been good preparation for diversity of tenants, and you've got that covered. Certainly, it's in your best interest, so as well as ours too. But no, I think it's great, and I'm excited about all of it. That's all I have. I'm supportive of it.
Thank you, Councilman Smiley. Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Harris and team. Great job on presenting this to us tonight. And I thought it was also a great job of taking architectural elements and making the front facades for a precast building and something that's more warehouse appealing. So keep working on that with our planning commission. The Gateway Plan Unit Development Overlay was created to allow more flexibility in redeveloping this land for the former Ford site. So I'm very much in favor of the rezoning. It does allow flexibility. And, as being a commercial property owner myself, I know that the new economy calls for less fixed office, less butts in seats in office buildings, less brick and mortar retail, right? And we're going in for this. But the demands are out there for the industrial, warehousing, logistics, provisioning and distribution facilities, and cold storage, right? Cold storage is big right now as well. So I'm very much in favor of this type of development. I think about 10 of my questions were already answered and comments by my fellow councilmen, so that's good. Two more things I just wanted to bring up. One was, it was unclear to me in Ms. McIntyre's write-up or in the documents that were provided to us, but there's 350 feet southbound Wixom where there's a pinch off between Alpha Tech and the onboard ramp to westbound 96. And it wasn't clear to me if that was going to be completed with the phase one of the project, because my concern, as Councilman Sharp said, when you have semis that would be exiting and all of a sudden they have to merge into a lane to the left, only to get back to the right 350 feet later, that would be a concern. So I wasn't sure if that was in the phase one of the project. Maybe Ms. McIntyre can address that.
We actually were looking at that today. My understanding is that it is not in phase one, it will be in phase two, but their engineer can confirm. I can actually look at the development agreement. I'll pull that up real quick, but we did want clarification on that. Let me see.
Yeah, because even if buildings A and B get built out with 1 to 9 tenants, that could be a major issue and causing a disruption in traffic.
Sure. Just give me a second and I will find that for you.
Yeah, this is Jason again. I'm pulling up the road commission review. I think it was spelled out in there. I believe Kelly's right, though. It was phase two.
And I think that should be looked at very, very closely because even if you get to the traffic count you're talking about, southbound Wixom Road during the AM hours, it's bad enough as is. And even before Menards opens or Aldi's opens, it's quite a cluster down there. So having large semis merge back to the left, only to have to go back right, again, 350 feet later, I think would pose an issue. So the second concern that I'd have, I appreciate that you had called out 8-foot wide pedestrian safety paths through the development. And it looks like the northbound continuation of the safety path along Wixom Road. My concern, and I don't know if it's possible, you had mentioned 100-foot green belt between Wixom Road and the actual parking areas and the building itself. If there's any way to move the north-south safety path inboard and provide some natural barrier for pedestrians and bicycle traffic, when they have some green space in between them and the traffic, because with the widening of Wixom Road and the addition of that right lane at West Road, it will only make that safety path closer to Wixom Road and 45-mile-an-hour traffic. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to bring up as something to really consider as we go into final site approval, but very much in favor of the proposed rezoning. Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, Mr. Harris, thank you to you and your team for an excellent presentation tonight. This is a great opportunity for our city. It's an exciting development. Not only will it be aesthetically pleasing, but it's going to be bringing a lot more jobs into this area. And with more jobs in this area, it means more customers in our restaurants and our local businesses, and that they're hurting right now. And this will help them out a lot. And you've got your, I guess, your marching orders to, what the council is looking for in this, as far as some windows and green space and trees and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what comes forward and with your final plans. And with that, I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation by staff, the planning consultant, and the planning commission that city council approved the introduction of an amendatory ordinance to rezone approximately 104.4 acres at 29311 South Wixom Road, parcel number 22-072-00-012 from M2 General Industrial to GPUD Gateway Planned Unit Development for the following reasons. One, the proposed rezoning meets the qualifying conditions that the property be within the former Ford Wixom plant site. Two, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the goals, policies, and future land use map in the City of Wixom Master Plan. Three, the proposed rezoning is comparable with the site's physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features. Four, the proposed uses in the GPUD are compatible with surrounding uses and zoning in terms of land suitability, impacts on the environment, density, nature of uses, traffic impacts, aesthetics, infrastructure, and potential influence on property values. The capacity of the city infrastructure and services is sufficient to accommodate the uses permitted in the district without compromising the health, safety, and welfare of the city. And the proposed rezoning allows greater flexibility in land development and uses. Roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Gotchel,
Yes.
Councilmember Grunland Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Very good. Next up is the second call to the public. Again, the rules to the call to the public are as follows. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence. And again, immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council. All comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. And again, this is an electronic meeting, so members of the public wishing to participate in a virtual public comment must alert us that they wish to speak by pressing *9 on their telephone keypad. By pressing *9, it'll activate the raised hand feature, signaling to us that you wish to comment, and you will be called on one at a time as it would happen during an in-person meeting. Do we have anybody for the second call to the public?
Yes, phone caller 0828 raised their hand. If you press *6 on your phone, you can unmute yourself and address council. Go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. I have a question concerning.
Name and address, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't think I had to do that. My name is Dan Aubrey. I'm at 3569 Barberry here in
Thank you.
Wixom. I'd like to if anybody could address the issue if there's a status on the reduction of the intensity of the streetlights within the Stonegate Village as they're building now. The faceted globes that they use and the LEDs create intense spotlight effect on the interior walls of our house. And I can only imagine how bright these must be within the houses of in the development. And anybody can just drive by Charms Road section to see just how bright they are on the houses. And they're lit up like daylight. And clearly there will be complaints from homeowners as they move in. But I did call on this a few months ago, and I didn't know if there's any status, if the owner of this, the builder, planned on doing anything with these lights. It just seems to be merely just a matter of the reduction of the LED lumen within each of the bulbs themselves, or the globes. That's all I had to say about that, though.
Okay, thanks. I'll give you a quick answer, Mr. Aubrey, and I know I talked to you right after that meeting a couple of months ago when we talked. Our building department went out with a light meter and walked around, and the glow, or whatever you want to call it, of those lights, they are within the ordinance. So there's really not much we can do about that at this time. And again, if the residents move in and the residents complain to the developer, then maybe they'll change anything. But as a city, everything is within the ordinance, so there's not much we can do about that.
Okay. That's good. I mean, I'm glad somebody did go about it. I think it's just probably at the point now that if the builder or the site owner knows that there's an issue with these lights on existing homes around the development, and there will be when people move in, that it would be just the right thing to do. I know it's not expensive. I've even priced these things out myself to put a lower intensity LED light module within each one. But if he could do the right thing, that would be the nice thing to do. That just seems like it's not done very much anymore. People step it up to the plate and taking care of the community around them. But yeah, if it's within specs, sure, there's nothing really the city can do about it except for maybe ask the site owner to take care of the lights. But I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
We'll see what we can do, Mr. Aubrey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other for the call members for the call to the public?
No one has raised their hand yet. We'll give it another moment. Another reminder, press *9 on your phone to raise your hand to address council. No one else has raised their hand.
All right, seeing none, I'll close the second call to the public. I know on the agenda, there's not another spot for council comments, but does any council member want to make a comment? Councilmember Gaccio?
Thank you. I guess I would just kind of second Mr. Aubrey's concern about or asking the developer to install some different light bulbs in there. I mean, we've kind of dealt with other similar situations in the past. where gas stations were being developed and we're going to be shining on neighborhoods, and we've made sure things were screened. So I know that whole development at Stonegate Village was a bit of heartache for all of those homeowners to begin with, because it tore up the natural area behind them. But now they've got lights shining in all night. So that is probably even more so less pleasant. So anything we can do to encourage the builder to come around and change those out would probably be helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Berman?
I wasn't going to say anything, but with regards to that Stonegate, after the first time the resident came and spoke to us about it, I remember us talking about having those lights unscrewed in the street until the houses were finished. And a couple weeks later, I drove through that development one night to see what he was talking about, those lights, and I noticed that court, the northern court over by where I assume he lives, all those street lights there were off and unscrewed. So I'm not sure, are they been turned back on? Because I thought, my understanding was those lights were going to stay off until those houses were built in that area that would effectively give him the screening from those light posts.
The court, on the court, they have been, those lights are off, the houses have been built. This was the property that's off of Wixom Road. And I'm sure that some of the lights are on right now because they are pouring basements. And I'm sure it's a safety issue that they've got open holes and they've got basements that are poured without any structure on them yet. So it's probably a safety issue why the lights are back on, to make sure that people notice that.
Because I do know that the developer did unscrew them for when we first talked about it several months ago. So it does sound like the developer is trying to do something with the lighting issue, and hopefully once all the houses are built, that should help solve it. But that's all I had. It's just my own personal knowledge of driving through there. After the first time he visited, it did look like there was some mediation taken at the time.
Yeah, and once the houses are built that back up against Hidden Creek subdivision, that will provide some buffer from those lights too. How much? We'll see, but it will provide some buffer for those also.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Deputy Mayor Resnick.
I also just wanted to pipe in on the issue with Mr. Aubrey's concern. I've walked my dog back there, and wow, those things are very, very, they appear to be bright. The issue I don't think is so much with the luminosity of it as it is with the degrees Kelvin, the temperature of the light. If, for people that understand light, the 2700 K is a warm, relaxing, very, very close to incandescent light because of the materials in incandescent light. When you get to 3000 and above, it's that bright, bright white. And I actually have a case where I bought warm white light bulbs for Christmas decorations 4 years apart, even though they were marked the same. They're incredibly brighter in appearance, but it's the warmth of the light. So perhaps at some point we should take a look at our ordinance and make sure that, in terms of the color of that, the color temperature being limited to something like 2700 is there, because it's a much more pleasant light experience than 3000 and 3400. So just a comment. I think that's what he's dealing with back there, not so much the intensity of the light, but the color of it. One last comment too is I hope everyone joins me in a prayer for a smooth transfer and uneventful transition of power tomorrow, and let us get back in this country, the work of running our country and getting the economy back on track.
City Manager Brown, do you have any closing comments?
Well, Mayor, I'm all set. I appreciate the hard work that everybody did looking over the plans as presented by Hunter Harris and his team at Flint Development. I congratulate them on a nice presentation. And I appreciate the support of the project at this time. I know staff put in a tremendous amount of work on this with Hunter Harris and his team. We're very pleased to see the reception that it got tonight, and we're looking forward to the action on the 26th and moving on from there, hopefully. So I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much, folks.
Very good. And seeing no other council comments, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, guys, and thanks for meeting on a short notice. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good week.
See you
Thank you
there.
very much.
Take care, Chief.
Appreciate it.
Good night, everyone.